right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Quill and Hammer Reforging Fiction. I'm Trevor. That's Zach. Zach, we've kind of been on a Star Wars kick the last 4 or 5 weeks, and
Yes, we have.
I see no reason to stop that because I love it. So, let's do a quick recap. We did the trilogies,
Right?
the first, the prequels and the sequels. And then last week we talked about how I would have fixed the all of Star Wars. I
The
solved Star Wars
franchise.
last week.
We solved Star
Um,
Wars.
so but that was my take. Last week was my take on the question, how would we fix the Star Wars problem? And you went in a completely different direction when I did. Because I decided, if you guys, the six of you that have been listening so far have not figured out, that my idea was to go and start with the rule of two and Darth Bane, and outline something that starts there and finishes after the sequel trilogy to wrap everything up without retconning anything, or. But when I asked Zach that same question, how do you fix Star Wars? He went in a completely different direction. And I'm gonna let Zach explain what his thought process was, and we'll go from there.
So here's the thing. Trevor was looking at this, years ago when we had this initial question, and he thought, well, how are we going to, within the lore, make everything make sense, tie up loose ends, make it a cohesive whole, and appease the fans by paying off in a good way? That was kind of Trevor's approach, right? My idea was, well, fetch, I don't know. We screwed up by doing the sequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy sucked. So what should we do? And I thought, let's go so far back in time that Anakin Skywalker doesn't even matter at that point. Skywalker saga is not even close to happening. And I thought, well, what if we did an origin story of the Jedi and the Sith? And the idea here was to reignite the excitement of the fandom, right? It wasn't so much how do we fix the lore and the plot holes and the things that just didn't make sense between the sequel movies. It was, let's get the fandom back. Let's get a unified fandom that is excited about the franchise again so that we can move forward, right? And there were a couple of things that kind of went into this. I kept thinking everything that Disney has done since getting the license to Star Wars, the franchise, has centered around about a 19-year period, specifically from when Luke was born to when the first Death Star blew up, and a little bit after. You've got the Mandalorian, you've got the Acolyte, right? But it's all so packed in there. It's so packed in there when you've got the old Republic that supposedly was 50,000 years old, right?
Right.
Give or take, And I thought, let's do something new. You know, as great as Rogue One is, we all know how it ends because the very first movie in the franchise told us in the first line of the opening crawl, Rebels died getting the plans to the Death Star.
Right.
We knew it was going to happen. It was a fantastic film, but we knew it was going to happen. Same thing with, everybody, well, that I love the Jedi Survivor, Jedi Fallen Order games. They're so good.
Right.
They're so much fun. The story is great, but it's set in the time between Order 66 and the Battle of the First Death Star, right?
Right.
You know that nothing's going to change. We already know what's happening in that timeline. And so my whole point was let's go all the way back to where it's so far in the past that it doesn't matter. You look pensive there, Trev.
So I don't listen, I don't look pensive in the this is a bad idea. I'm pensive in that way of like uh when you start a new book and you have no idea where it's gonna go,
Right.
and you've never heard of the author before and you're rolling the dice. That's what that was my thought was like I just put myself into a Star Wars fan. Remember, like, and to your point, everything that we have done since the beginning of Star Wars has been like we knew it was going to happen. Granted, you and I were not alive when Return of the Jedi came out and the original trilogy was um was finished, I guess. But
Right.
when the prequels came out, we all knew where that was going. And then as soon as they did The Force Awakens and it was, A New Hope 2.0, I lost all desire really because there were only so many places that they left themselves to go, as we've talked about, and it didn't.
Right.
And as each film came out, I got less and less excited.
Well, that's the
Um,
whole point, because you kind of know what's happening, you
uh-huh.
know,
And,
and
and
it's just too focused on those characters, that arc,
uh-huh.
and so my whole concept for this is to just get as far away from the dumpster fire as possible.
Which
It's like bad publicity. You don't
right,
want to acknowledge that you're related to, the dude who got caught selling cocaine at the McDonald's.
right.
You highlight that you're related to the neurosurgeon who just saved a little girl's life. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like it's publicity here. That's what we're going for.
Right. So
So,
so I agree. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was trying to be contemplative there. It came off in an interrupted way. I like where you're headed with this, is where I mean to be. So continue.
okay. So, like I said, my whole idea is centered around the origin of the Jedi Order and the Sith Order.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this has been discussed in Legends, but because Disney is who they are, they've destroyed Legends. They have kind of adapted some of the Legends and some of the lesser known material. Um, but it just doesn't ring all that true to me. It's like it's kind of hidden in some of the comics and that sort of thing. It's not real mainstream
Mhm.
Star Wars. So I'm going to take the liberty and just completely retcon the origins of the Jedi and the Sith.
And
As it stands, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say, and to be fair, I do not begrudge Disney wanting to put their own spin on things. I mean, you
Sure.
have when did I don't remember when the Thrawn trilogy came out, the but that was the first
Hmm.
real, adaptation outside of George Lucas, I think.
That is
But
correct.
but regardless, I don't mind them saying, listen, there's this whole world out there that we have created and it's awesome, cool, but like we kind of want to do our own thing and we just paid $4 billion for it, so screw you all, we're gonna do our own thing. And I don't mind that,
No,
except for they screwed it up
they did.
so
And that's
fantastically. That's
That's where this whole podcast comes from, is
where it
because
all
Disney
comes from.
screwed up Star Wars and we
So
have to fix it.
we have to fix it. So I do not mind, if anyone out there is like, you shouldn't do that or whatever. I don't know if anyone out there really cares as long as it's good.
Well,
So
that's the thing.
so that's the thing. And that's what this entire podcast has been from, is like, we don't care as long as it's done well. And
Exactly.
that's where all this comes from. So I am excited. We're going way back, and it doesn't
Way
even
back.
matter how many years it is, but call it 50,000 years to the origin of the Sith and the Jedi. And are we getting rid of like, the Sith as a species kind of
Well,
thing? Or
that was an idea that I toyed around with, and I'll maybe touch on that a little bit later when we get into some of the details. But I think it would be, and how I'm gonna explain this. I think it would be an interesting idea to have this origin be set in the Sith species. So
okay.
I'll touch on that a little bit later. It is something that I think could be interesting to explore.
Okay.
Um, but the whole idea is there are there should be different ways, different cultures that have used the Force.
Right.
You have in canon, you have the Jedi, you have the Sith. They're both using the Force. They use it in a different way to accomplish different things. And I thought, well, you should be able to extrapolate that to different cultures. And they do.
And they
You
do.
think about the Night Sisters of Dathomir, right?
Right.
They're using the Force, but it's in a completely different way, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, I've kind of toyed around with those things, and that'll drive some of the plot line in this trilogy that I have in mind.
Okay.
So going back to the setting, um, like I said, I would want to rewrite the origins of the Jedi and the Sith from the ground up. And it doesn't matter how long ago it is, like you said, 50,000, 100,000, whatever. But here's the idea, okay?
Okay.
Interplanetary travel is still in not its infancy, but I'm going to say its adolescence.
Okay.
Okay, it's still relatively a novelty. You know that there are other worlds. There are people who have traveled there, but it's not a widespread mainstream thing. Not every random person can hop on a starfighter and fly off to another planet, right? Like it's resource intensive, it's difficult, so it's not commonplace, okay? And by extension, interplanetary communication is also relatively non-existent, right?
Okay.
There's no republic, there's no, you know, cohesion. It's still kind of it's tribalism of the planets,
So
essentially is where we're at.
so
Or
in my mind, like I'm trying to compare it to maybe like 18th century, world history where like, yeah, you could get on ships and go places, but it's not like, like the trip to America from, London was still going to take 4, 5 months. Like, are we talking that kind of thing? Or like, yeah, they had hyperdrives and it would take however long it takes and they could still go to light speed, but it just wasn't widely available because of how
I think
resource
it's
intensive.
I think that's more the idea.
Okay.
It's too resource intensive to be able to make it feasible.
Okay. All right.
And so for that reason, you have interplanetary war because somebody comes and tries to mine the resources, that sort of stuff, to make these things more widely available. And
Right.
that's kind of the setting that I want this to start in.
Okay.
Um, Also, the Force isn't necessarily well understood by everybody in the galaxy,
Right.
right? So we and especially in the central characters um culture, there's only been one or two legends, okay? You can
Okay.
have species and cultures like, say, Yoda's species, who have always had this deep connection to the Force, and it's been part of their culture forever, right? That's
Okay.
not the case with this one. Not very Force sensitive as far as a culture goes. It's more just there's a story in the oral history that has been passed down, okay?
Right.
Um, So the way that we start, the bare bones of movie number one in the beginning is that it's going to focus on two brothers. And now I
Okay.
know as soon as I say that, we all know how this is going to go, and we're going to We're just gonna get the spoilers out of the way early, okay? Yeah, one brother is going to end up being the founder of the Sith, and one brother is going to end up being a founder of the Jedi.
Okay.
Yeah, it's obvious. But that's not what is important, right? What's important is telling a good story, telling a compelling story from start to finish with interesting characters, interesting motives, and motives that the audience can get into and understand both sides. That would be my goal of this story, is
Okay.
that by the end of the third film, I want you to be able to recognize that, yeah, the Jedi are the good guys, but the foundations of the Sith Order, they had some points. Maybe they're misguided in the end, but they had some points to begin with. And
Right.
the way that it came about, you know, sort of makes sense. It's not just evil for evil's sake, because I think that's a lot of what we see with the Emperor, for example, is he's kind of just evil for evil's sake. He wants power, and that's the end of it.
Right.
So my goal is to have some interesting characters, tell good stories from start to finish. Okay.
Okay.
So
So
the
brothers, are we talking twins? Are we talking a big age gap? Are we talking like you and me, 4.5, 5 years? Like, does
relatively
that
close in
matter at
age.
all?
It matters in the sense that they both need to be around 8 or 10 in the beginning.
Okay, so
That's where I want this to start. So either twins or Irish twins, where you're less than a year apart. They have to be pretty close. They have to be, and you know what? I'm going to strike that. It's just they have to be twins, twin
okay,
brothers for emotional reasons. And also, another quick spoiler is I still like the idea of a dyad in the Force.
okay,
And I think these two are going to need to be a dyad in the Force to drive some plot points, to drive some emotion into this, okay?
all right,
So back to, the sort of the setting. The brothers are part of a planet that just happens to be rich in resource X that is needed for hyperspace travel, right?
right,
It's a complete plot device, and I'm okay admitting that because you have to have something to just get things moving, right?
right, right.
They have they have resource X, and a neighboring planet comes and, Empire takeover forces them all to mine resource X, right? So for generations, they've been under this hard rule of law, and this antagonistic planet has some rudimentary weapons. Okay. We're talking, you remember in Knights of the Old Republic how they had vibranium swords?
Yeah,
And it was like a step between just regular steel, but also kind of you could deflect blaster bolts with it.
yeah. That you could kind of fight a lightsaber
You
blade
could kind
with
of
it.
fight a lightsaber blade with something like that. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you make it look like it has a pulsating electric edge going up its blade or whatever, but
Yeah,
something like that.
cosmetic, whatever, but it's like a precursor to a lightsaber.
Precursor to a lightsaber.
Okay.
That's what we're looking at. Blasters are, go ahead.
Oh, no, that was my question. Do blasters exist?
I think blasters either already exist or same kind of thing, like a step down from a blaster.
Okay.
Maybe you have to have more, it's clunkier, you have more limits in your ammunition, but basically a blaster, right?
Okay.
So precursor weapons to your regular blaster and your lightsaber, okay?
Okay.
Um, Now all those things are important because this civilization, this planetary coalition that is invading the brothers' planet, the reason why they're mining this resource is to further these technologies. They want to, you know, put scientific resources into their weaponry, into their ability to explore the galaxy, not necessarily for military conquest, but just that's just what they're going for.
Right.
And they decided they would take what they wanted. And that's how it is. Okay.
Okay.
Um, so like I said, 2 to 3 generations, this has been going on, and the brothers' people are beginning to die out. And this is where I think it would be interesting for their species to be the Sith,
Okay.
right? So they are the Sith by species. And that doesn't mean that they're inherently evil. That's just what they are, in the same way that a Wookiee is a Wookiee, right?
Right.
So their people are dying out. Everybody works in the mines, from the smallest child to the oldest elder. Everybody works in the mines. Um, and you have the kids working, the two brothers working. It's a hard life. Their mother and father um, bolster them up with these legends of force users. You can call them whatever you want: sorcerer, wizard, whatever, elder, healer, it doesn't matter. Whatever they are, it's this mythical figure that had mythical abilities, right? And it doesn't necessarily need to be anything specific, just that, there was an ancient sorcerer who united all of the people of the Sith and created the Sith Order, or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Right.
United their planet, united their people, and saved them from extinction once before. And the brothers become enraptured with this idea of mystic abilities and saving their people, right? And, you can say that this figure of legend had the ability to perceive people's emotions and to kind of know what they were thinking. And the brothers find that they kind of have that sort of thing between the two of them.
Yeah.
They can feel each other's emotions even when they're in separate minds. They know when one is in trouble, kind of like a force premonition type thing.
Right.
And, you can throw other typical force stuff in there, like, maybe they get scared and they do a force pull. I don't know, rudimentary things that aren't explained, right?
Right.
To show that these two are force sensitive, okay?
Okay.
Fast forward, they're still very young, 8 to 10 years old, and an opportunity arises for the two of them to make an escape. And they don't want to because their mother or their father is going to be left behind. It's, I don't know, you can work out the details, but they make an escape, okay? Um, and you make the typical "we'll come back and free you" type of promise, and yes, there are parallels to Anakin, and I think that's okay, because at the end of the day, there's only really three stories that have ever been written: man versus man, man versus environment, and man versus himself.
Yeah.
And I think you can weave all of those in, and it's okay to have different or similar themes between stories and still tell something compelling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, so anyway, these brothers, they hop on a ship. They have no idea how to use it. They just punch in buttons and they make it to a planet which we know called Jeddah.
Okay.
Jeddah, and this is, purely just because it's there and it's easy to pick from. And, I guess you can kind of extrapolate from Rogue One that on Jeddah, which is where um the Death Star was first tested, if you remember in Rogue One,
Yep.
when Director Krennic tests it out. Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor are looking for Saw Gerrera, and there's that whole scene. That's Jeddah, right? Supposed to
Yep.
be rich in Kyber crystals, strong with the Force, and so this is where that idea of other cultures being strong in the Force comes from, right? You
Right.
have this culture of the Jeddah people, and they don't need to be human, they can be alien, it doesn't matter, but they have incorporated the Force into their culture, their religion, and it's all centered around using Kyber crystals, right? And
Yeah.
so these two young boys, they crash land on this planet, and you guess what happens? They get taken in by the Jeddah people, and um they learn about the Force. They learn how to use the Force and how to channel the Force through Kyber crystals. Okay.
Okay.
Um, fast forward, they're trying to figure out a way that they can get back to their planet and liberate their people. They're still fascinated by this legendary figure, and they're motivated by the fact that their mother or their father or both or whoever is still there, and they promise to come back and break them out. So on a whim, and this can be, several years later when they're arrogant and they think they know everything, they think they're powerful because they've begun learning these force abilities, they go back and they try to, make a jailbreak. Um, so they get there, they try to liberate their people, but they fail despite their force capabilities because the weapons are just too overwhelming. They get overwhelmed by numbers, they get overwhelmed by blasters, by vibra blades, and they barely make it out alive. Maybe their father or whoever is killed in the process. Okay.
Right.
So emotional trauma, they get humbled pretty quickly, they lose someone they love, and they barely make it out of the star system, but they don't know how to get back to Jeddah for some reason, whether it's because the ship was damaged, they had to take a different ship that didn't have the coordinates. And once again, they crash land on another planet that we've seen, which is Ilum. And if you remember, Ilum is a frozen planet that also has strong Kyber crystal, um, I guess,
Deposits.
deposits. That's the best word for it.
Yeah.
We see Cal Kestis go there in the first Jedi Fallen Order game, right?
Right.
So they go there, they take shelter in a cave, and they find Kyber crystals, right? And they
Hmm.
start meditating and trying to find ways to use the Kyber crystals. And yeah, I know this is kind of a big jump, but we're just going to take it. And in the detail writing, you can figure it out. But they make the first lightsabers. Okay,
Yeah.
so they're trying to figure out, okay, well, we learned these force abilities and it didn't work. They beat us with their weapons. So what do we need to do? We need to find a new kind of weapon that can both deflect blaster fire and it can deflect um,
Just
these vibra blades,
fiber blades.
these
Yeah.
these melee weapons. And so they create lightsabers, and it's this big deal. You can say they're guided by the Force. You can have all this kind of lore rich cinema going on, and story writing going on.
Right.
Um, and they use these kyber crystals and they're deeply connected to their lightsabers, right? Then they go back. You have an emotional return. They finally liberate their
Homeworld.
their people, their homeworld, and they're crowned as kings of the people, right?
Right.
Now, what I didn't go into is you need to have a good villain here. Their overlord from the time they were young, who has been malicious to them. He can't just be evil for evil's sake, like I said earlier about the Sith.
Right.
He has to be doing this for a similar reason, I think. He's trying to liberate his family. So, and this kind of harkens to Rogue One a little bit, where Jyn Erso's dad is only, you know, putting together the Death Star because he needs to protect Jyn, right?
Right.
So, all these kinds of things, right? And that's where you end the movie. They defeat their captors, they, push them back, and they have the few survivors left. They get crowned as kings of the Sith, and the movie ends. Okay. Now go ahead. Give me what you think of that so far, and then we'll
Okay.
go into the next one.
So as you have said before, and as not a surprise,
Right.
we know ish where it's all going. And and
Exactly.
and the point of Star Wars is not to have the most plot twisty mystery, twisty turny, whatever. But it's to tell the story in a fantastic, amazingly good way. So let me just put that out there. Um, so as long as you are doing it right, and as long as you build the right character motivations, I have no problems with the premise of this. Now, I do have some questions.
Sure.
Um, you know, talk about the Overlord, who is a who like you said, you have to have the villain, because it really does hinge on this. Is the villains like is he just some schmuck that is a genius? Not a schmuck, but like is he like being forced by his rulers to come and do this? Because clearly the guy who comes from another world doesn't really want to be there, doesn't want to be on this mining world that they're just stripping for resources. Um, he has to have some sort of motivation, right? Is that
Exactly.
is that, is there a threat that the other world is facing? Because in my mind, that is more compelling than I mean, the world is more complex than just good and evil, right? And
Absolutely.
and this is something that you and I brushed on when we were talking about The Force Awakens in our episode. It was like if we could fix it, we would want to have three or more parties involved because it's never just the good guys versus the bad guys. There are good people on both sides. There are people who are shady or outright evil on other sides, people who have been molded, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what are your thoughts to world we'll call it world E for evil, is going to world X for whatever resource X is. Excuse the train. Um, can you hear the train in the
No, I
background?
can't hear a thing.
Oh, dang.
You're
Well,
chilling, brother.
it's loud. Um,
Okay. So
but so, so,
here's
so
what I'm
talk to me
imagining.
about that. Like is there another party at play putting pressure on that planet, and that is adding to the pressure that is being put on evil overlord A? What are your thoughts
I
there?
I think you can spin it that way. What I imagine though, and I'm not going to be so stingy about what's going on in world E for evil.
Yeah.
There could be, an impending invasion. They could be, it as far as I'm concerned, that doesn't matter as much.
Okay.
I want to focus on this one overlord. We'll call him like a not a senator, but like a prefect, right? Is
All right.
that
Yeah.
what you call him?
Sure.
Or the whatever, doesn't matter, right?
Right.
But the way that I see it is he needs to be the guy who isn't good and he's doing objectively bad things for a morally like it's a good outcome that he's wanting,
Right.
but he's doing bad things to achieve that outcome.
Okay.
His kid's sick. His kid's
There
sick
you go.
and he's living in the slums. The only way to advance in this society is by working for the government type thing.
Right.
You
Being
have to
useful.
being useful. You can say it's a militaristic type of society, and so you have to work your way up the ranks. And he's sent to another planet and is away from his family. He's got a kid with an incurable disease or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Right.
But something like that. I don't think that he's necessarily evil himself,
Right.
but he will do anything. He has no morals when it comes to securing a better life for his kids. Because
Okay.
that's where you have the audience conflict,
Right.
is because we none
It's
of us want to be away from our kids. None of us want to
right.
see suffering in our kids. But the
Right.
question is, when do you cross the line?
Yeah.
And that's all over in society right now, and
Right.
so I think that's sort of the angle that you have to take this particular villain. And like I said, The exact nature of what's going on his planet, I don't think matters as much. It needs to
Okay.
be stated.
Right.
Somebody has to figure out that detail. I'm just personally not concerned with it at this stage.
So right now it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that you have someone trying to protect his family and who has no qualms about being evil if it like who cares about your sons? My son is the only thing that matters, kind of thing.
Exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
it kind of not to the same level as this, doesn't go as low as that, but it's kind of the same idea of Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah.
You have the Mongol invasion of Japan. The samurai try to honor their traditions, but it's killing the people. And so Jin goes against his Jin Sakai, not Jin Urso. Jin
Right.
Sakai turns his back on his traditions because he has to save his people, and he resorts to dishonorable things like poison and stabbing people in the back, these sorts of underhanded tactics, because
Right.
there's only one thing that matters, and that's the survival of his people.
Right.
So Jin Sakai has honor. This particular person doesn't, but he's doing these things for a good cause. That's
Okay.
what I think makes a compelling villain.
Right.
Somebody that you can at least somewhat resonate with their intentions at least.
Right.
So
Now
that's
my
where we go.
question that answers that question. The only other question I have about this, where I'm assuming the liberation, the lightsaber, they come back, they drive the people from the planet. Do we kill Evil Overlord 1?
Now that is exactly where the sequel picks up.
Okay.
Okay. And that's what I think is going to be so interesting is that you immediately pick up right after that because the brothers are united in the first film.
Right.
Okay. They're united by trying to liberate their people. And I think you need to show through your writing, through your storytelling, that brother A has vengeful tendencies. Brother B is, has a little
You know
bit more
what?
perspective. He
Right.
tries to think about everybody that's involved type thing. He's not hasty in making his decisions.
Right.
Whereas brother A is rash, we'll call him, right? He jumps to conclusions. He's ready to act.
Yeah.
So these two youngish boys, we'll call them 18, very young to become the co-kings of an entire planet.
Right.
Their very first problem that they have to decide is what do we do with the remnants of this invasion force? Do we kill them? Do we enslave them? Do we exile them to another planet? Do we, you know, slap them on the wrist and say, get off our planet and don't come back? They don't have the military force to be able to repel a retaliatory invasion. What do they do with them?
Right.
Brother A, he wants to make an example. Don't cross us because we will come back for vengeance. There's no mercy type thing. Brother two has reservations about being as cruel as, they were to us. And like I said, you can see where it's going. And that's sort of the point, right?
Right.
The point is to show where these two unified people begin to divert to explain why the Sith and the Jedi today are so different.
Right.
So,
And to be realistic, it doesn't need to be that they are immediately like they immediately can't stand it, being in the other person's presence.
right.
It's like, hey, I don't know if we should kill them all. Isn't there something else we can do? And it doesn't even need to be like the Jedi
No.
high-minded idea. It's like Brother B could be like, we could just keep them here,
We
turn them into our own slaves, teach
well,
them, make
exactly.
them teach us how to do what they're already doing, better ourselves,
That's
and have it
exactly where I was going to go with it.
be a little morally, not morally gray, but it doesn't have to be pure light side, pure
No.
dark side to begin with, right?
Exactly, because you're starting off neutral with both of these two people,
Right.
right? I mean, they're young. They haven't even figured out who they are yet, and they're made kings.
Right.
That's the whole point, is they don't know anything. So one of them maybe is leaning a little bit this way, the other's leaning a little bit this way, but they're still kind of going back and forth at this stage.
Right.
And like you said, that's the whole point. They're not at each other's throats at this stage. They're just discussing. They just have different ideas.
Right.
And the whole point of this first dilemma is to show that they have different tendencies and different starting perspectives,
Right.
not to show that they are already, one is totally light side, one is totally dark side.
Right.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that quite literally is the entire point of this first dilemma, and it's why I wanted to start there with the sequel.
Okay.
So and it doesn't matter what the outcome is. I
Right.
think whatever's best for driving the rest
That's
of the story forward,
mhm.
it doesn't matter, right? So the next thing they have to do is figure out how they're going to distribute the rule of their people. Are they going to cut the planet in half? I rule this half, you rule that half. Are they going to, have you have to have a consensus to be able to make any decisions? Are they going to one side be military, one side be political? How are they going to do it?
Right.
And I think this is another opportunity for you to show where their tendencies and where their priorities lie. So, Brother One, who's going to be the Sith, he wants to focus on military might through the Force. Okay.
Yeah.
And I should have mentioned, they want to incorporate the Force into their culture. They want that to be part of the Sith culture, is to the Sith as a species, is
Right.
to
Right.
be Force focused. Okay. Brother One wants to focus on military might and power, but not, at least initially, not to go and conquer, but to be able to defend. He wants to
Right.
focus on military might so that they don't ever be enslaved again, right?
Right.
To keep the people safe, type of deal. Brother Two wants to deep dive into what the nature of the Force is, to figure out how to better the lives of the people that they are leading, right?
Mhm.
So you show that they have these differing ideas and they're still trying to work together. They develop a Force Academy, and they kind of both take different sides. So think of it as, you've got Mace Windu, who, at least in this quick example, Mace Windu is teaching, the combative nature of the Force. And then you have Yoda, who's teaching meditation and how to feel the Force, type deal.
Right. Now, let me interject. Are they
Sure.
both maybe not equal warriors per se, but like brother one, who's going to be the Sith, he's like focused on combat and things, but does that mean that brother two has no idea how to fight or whatever? Because like
Not at
to
all.
go through your analogy, like Yoda could still whoop Mace Windu's butt all the time, you know? Um,
So that's a good thing that you bring up, because another essential part of showing this progression is showing that they are equal and they see each other as equals and they share everything.
yeah,
They're they are working with each other. Maybe brother one is developing new fighting techniques or new combative force abilities, but he shares them with brother two. Brother
right,
two is figuring out how to sense things, how to, have premonition in the force, but he shares it with brother one.
right.
They are 100% united still at this stage.
Okay,
Something happens. I didn't get it far enough into development of the plot as to what happens. These are just the bare bones.
yeah,
Conflict starts to arise, whether it's another invasion force, whether it's, a threat of an invasion force, and brother one wants to go and take it down. It doesn't matter. But conflict starts to arise, and it starts to arise within the academy as well. You have those who are more loyal to brother two, coming to his side, those who are more loyal to brother one coming to his side, and there's contentions. And then the climax of the film is you have this ginormous fight between all of the force users. You have dozens and dozens of lightsaber battles going on at once. And the ultimate is when Brother One and Brother Two are fighting, and like I said, I didn't get quite into the details of the plot, but there has to be enough clash that it comes to that these twins who liberated their people together come to a head. And that's not all that unrealistic because that sort of thing happens all the time in history. You think about uh, Remus and Romulus, who founded Rome.
Yep.
They were brothers. There's a reason why it's not called Reem. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Right.
So these sorts of things happen, right?
They do. They do.
And I think that's the way you want to take it. And it happens, you have big, and I'm thinking like the battle of the heroes on Mustafar. Anakin and Obi-Wan, this super emotional, epic lightsaber fight that ends with Brother Two, the non-combative one, winning and refusing to kill his opponent, right?
Right.
And he decides that this is not how I want to be. He throws his lightsaber down and takes any followers who will come with him, and they head to probably Jeddah or wherever, it doesn't matter where, and they destroy any trace of where they're going. They destroy the star maps to where they're going so that they can be in peace, right?
So so let me ask a couple clarifying questions.
Sure.
And maybe there's only one or two, but what is the timeline for this movie? Are we
I
talking
think go ahead.
like are we talking there has to be enough time for them to train people?
Yes,
Um, and realistically, schisms like this happen over years, not months.
absolutely. We are
So
talking like 15, 20 years.
yeah, so like you have this timeline of and just a bare bones whatever, but like they start the academy, they are still King Brother One, King Brother Two. They are, administering. They're doing everything. They're doing everything
Right.
for this world, and of course that causes problems, but it's over the course of 15 or 20 years where they start to really clash, have more and more um whatevers. So that means you have to have more and more conflict and pressure, whether it's from their world, from their people, from outside influences, people trying to come in. I imagine, and sorry to step on your toes if I
Not at
haven't got
all. No, no.
but I'm imagining that there's this other world doesn't just go away. And so I think if I am trying to be realistic, Brother One and Brother Two keep repelling these forces, and then Brother One becomes more and more, I don't want to say dark side, but he embraces the
The power.
harsher powers of the Force, and that makes your other brother uncomfortable trying to balance things out or whatever. And so I think that could be a really compelling, not dash two. I don't know what I'm trying to say, like
But
subplots
it,
and
it can
things.
it
Like
can be
that's
what
where
drives the character development.
what's driving the character development, and you have to have these different things happening. I kind of think that's smart.
Now, if you remember, now this is showing how much of geeks we are, but it doesn't matter. If you remember in Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Yep.
the episode in season 3 where Aang and Zuko separately are learning about the lives of Avatar Roku and Fire Lord Sozin.
Right.
And, it's kind of like you're seeing these events in real time, but you also know that it's being narrated from behind.
Right.
maybe you could take that sort of an approach to it, to show to ease the passage of time along a little bit.
Right.
And that doesn't matter so much. That's not a hard stop for me, but just an idea to play around with
Right.
because we're talking about 15, 20 years within a movie. So
Right. So we,
just an
we have to
idea.
have some compelling plot force that makes it not tedious
Hmm.
necessarily. We still know where it's all going. We just need to get there, but we need to do it really well.
Right.
So, all of you out there, we're doing this really well, and imagine us
Uh-huh.
being the best writers of science fiction ever while doing this.
Because it's impeccable. No, but
Yes.
these really are just bare bones of something that I think could be developed into a really good story.
Right.
Now, the one scene that I have a strong vision of,
Yes.
all of Brother Two and all of his followers, if they're going to come with him, he makes them throw down their lightsabers.
Yeah.
They're done, they destroy them, whatever. They no longer have them. They vow to no longer fight. Brother Two takes that lightsaber that he created with, or sorry, Brother One takes the lightsaber that Brother Two created with him in the cavern of Ilum.
So, like, Brother Two had the first lightsaber. Is
They
that what you're
created
saying?
two. They
They
created two lightsabers.
Okay.
And it was important because the Kyber crystals were deeply resonant with those two brothers.
Right.
They
Okay.
were part of them. They were the ones that they had been raised with on Jeddah, right?
Mm.
That's what they learned to use the Force with. And they put them into their lightsabers, okay? Now, Brother Two throws his aside, effectively severing ties with, at least in Brother One's eyes, his entire past. He's saying that the Sith as a people don't matter, that he as his brother doesn't matter, and that everything they went through, he's basically spitting upon it. So Brother Two, or Brother One, picks up Brother Two's lightsaber, crushes it in his hand, pulls out the crystal, and you see him bleed the crystal. The first time a crystal is ever bled. And then you have this awesome look that is being foreshadowed of his whatever colored lightsaber would be coolest, whether it's green, blue, yellow, purple, doesn't matter, and red. He becomes the first dual wielding force user
Okay.
just because it would look so freaking cool. So,
Right.
bleeding the crystal, I think, has emotional importance. And the double or the dual wielding with one a light side color and one the red of the Sith, I think is just so bad A that it needs to happen for me.
All right.
It's a non-negotiable visual.
Right. And is that the last scene you see?
That is the last scene.
Okay.
So, think about, and I watched a video a long time ago where somebody was talking about how in all of the Star Wars films, the ends of the film has no dialogue. George Lucas tells the story by just visuals.
Right.
And you think about um, Revenge of the Sith, you have Anakin becoming Darth Vader, you have Obi-Wan delivering Luke to his parents. You see Leia with Senator Organa, right?
Right.
So in this film, what I think I see is Brother Two and his followers, landing on whatever planet they go to, and but then the final scene is Brother One crushing that lightsaber and then bleeding the crystal right there. And you have the orchestral music going crazy at that point, and then it fades to the credits. Like
All right.
that has to happen for me.
Okay.
So
So we have made it through two movies,
made it through two movies.
and you went from the brothers being co-kings at the end of the first movie to Brother Two is gone, landed wherever he did, and Brother One bleeding the crystal putting it in another lightsaber, and you have the red and the whatever dual wielding blades.
I mean,
Boom.
I'm partial to yellow myself.
Yeah.
So as long as this is my movie, I'm gonna say it's yellow and red.
So you got
So
yellow, you got red, and it's
and it's flipping awesome is what it is.
all right. Okay.
So
So then we're there.
we're
Now,
there.
clearly we know that movie number three has to happen, as we have called this a trilogy. So
Yes.
let's jump into movie three. What happens here?
So now I'm gonna be totally honest. This is the weakest part of the plot that I have so far.
Right.
You know, the beginnings of the idea was where I was the strongest, and it's kind of fizzled out as the trilogy goes on. So I would need a lot of help to make this one work.
Okay.
But the basic idea is that even longer has passed. These two brothers are now old men. You know,
Okay.
we meet them when they're 5 years old, and now we finish with them being old men.
Okay.
Um, my idea is that brother one is searching for brother two during all this time. He can't let it go. He has to have closure, whether that's to kill him, whether that's to convert him back to being, you know, part of his ideals and making him submit to him doesn't matter, but he needs some kind of closure. So he has been chasing his brother for all this time. Brother one, or sorry, I'm mixing them up. Sith brother is looking for brother, other brother.
Right.
Jedi brother is also needs closure, but he's seeking it in a different way. And this is the last time that I'm going to come back to it. But again, he goes looking for other cultures that have used the Force to try and figure out how somebody can become how his brother became in his eyes.
Yeah.
So, and again, you have to make sure that you're showing both perspectives here, that one is not necessarily totally good and one is not necessarily totally evil. There are
Right.
tendencies, but it's not cut in stone, cut and dry, set in stone. So, in the Jedi brother's eyes, his brother has fallen from the light side of the Force, so to speak. You don't use that terminology because I think that's a construct by the Jedi and the Sith
Right.
later down the road. But he's going to all these separate ancient civilizations and cultures that have used the Force. And he's trying to figure out if there are patterns, if there are things that are objectively good and things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do. Um, Sith brother picks up on brother two's trail, and you can have this sort of thing where they see the same signs of these ancient cultures, whether they've, had the same sort of thing where some of them were good, some of them were evil, they fight and they die out. And brother, Sith brother or Jedi brother interprets it one way. Sith brother comes, sees the exact same thing and interprets it a different way. And so they each are, sort of building their dogma from the same roots because of the way that they interpret it, right?
Right.
And so I think, this kind of continues on. There's still a dyad in the Force. That's how Sith brother has been tracking him all this time, is because he can still sense him out there. They have these, the same kind of thing between Rey and Kylo Ren where they're talking to each other. They don't really know where one or the other is, but they have these moments, right, where they're still connected.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not quite sure where it goes from there. Like I said, this is where I'm not entirely sure how it goes, but a couple of things that I think need to happen is Sith brother catches up with brother two, and he kills either his followers or maybe his new family or something because the Jedi brother vows not to fight
Right.
or has made a vow not to fight. And then, brother two realizes, well, I can't just let people die, so I guess I have to fight sometime. He forges a new lightsaber. They come to a head one more time, and now here's the end. They kill each other.
Okay.
Neither side wins. They kill each other. Their followers obviously blame the other, and that's how the eternal battle between the Jedi and the Sith begin.
Okay.
Is because they both are brought up, they both have their own dogma that they have indoctrinated themselves with,
Right.
and they see the other, the leader of the other force kills their
Right.
leader, and they're done. It's over, and that's how it goes. Now, like I said, this is the weakest of the three films, and I understand that. I am very much open to some bolstering here, but those are kind of my ideas.
So before I get into things that I would like to see happen in this third movie, um, all of you listening, I want your opinions in the comments. What plot points do we need? Because this is bare bones, and Zach has
Very
admitted
bare
that.
bones.
And it's more like we know that there has to be some form of animosity that has driven the ideologies and the hatred, and it just gets perpetuated because you need that seed, right? Because the Sith versus the Jedi goes forever. And over the next 50,000 or 100,000 years or however long, you lose the seed of what actually happened. It is just this perpetual hatred between the dark side and the light side, this group of people who they want power at all costs, this other side who are, they're the light side. They're trying to protect, but there's just this perpetual battle between them because one side won't leave the other alone. The other can't really just be pacifist to the point of, well, let's die out, and there needs to be balance. So, in my mind, that, like, we all know that that's how it's going to happen, right? And this is the story to get there, but we need 2 hours of plot material that propel us to this final battle. So, in my mind, I feel like you have to split it up into like what has been happening over the last 2 years. So like I kind of imagine Brother A and the Sith turning into more militaristic, imperialistic forces.
Right.
He's the king of the Sith world, but he starts dominating as he builds the Sith. I imagine him, one of his plot points is the first world he actually takes over is the world that keeps coming back to try to mine his planet. And he's
Sure.
like, so like that's maybe a thing. He takes over that world and then more and more, and you can kind of see that they've got worlds out there. Whereas the Jedi have kind of become like you can see them becoming maybe advisors to these kings or these other planets. Like, look what we have learned. And does that make sense? In my mind, I feel
Right.
like you could see the origins of how the Jedi became the protectors of the Republic.
Right.
They start out as advisors and move from there. So you can start and have these little seeds of like where they come or where they end up in the Skywalker saga and all of that. And so you have these kind of things and you can have them brushing up against each other.
Right.
So like you've got Jedi and different, followers of the light side of the Force because that's what we have to call it.
Right.
Even though it hasn't, whatever. So you've got the Jedi and they are, becoming the protectors and the whatevers and advisors of these worlds and trying to go around do good and protect people. You've got this militaristic Sith group and it's not necessarily the Sith versus the Jedi. It's like the Jedi are trying to help these worlds remain independent versus the Sith. I think
Right.
that could be a compelling thing where only necessarily the top ranked Jedi and Sith know the full story, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I was just spitballing.
Well, no, I think that's a good idea because, if everybody knew the full story, then it would be a lot more difficult to just, oh, well, the other side is wrong and we need to destroy them.
Right.
So there has to be some ignorance, I guess, in the rank and file of
Right.
both the Sith and the Jedi, and
Right.
and having this idea of them sort of pilgriming around to other planets and being advisors, spreading peace, being peacekeepers, keepers of the peace.
Right.
I think that, like you said, is a good seed to plant. But
And and I just thought of this. Sorry to interrupt. I don't necessarily think the Sith brother needs to be like it's not imperialism for imperialism's sake. He is saying he is going around to these planets and saying, look what has happened to look what happened to our planet. So in order, this planet kept attacking our planet, so we went and took them over and got rid of these not monarchical. What's the word? These
tyrannical,
tyrannical people. And then we started, you know, we're not taking over worlds to take over worlds. We are going in to protect these worlds from these outside
right,
forces. And so it becomes more altruistic because the brother has not become evil necessarily.
right,
He has become
pragmatic in his own way, I
a
guess you could
little a
say.
little pragmatic. Like not to say he's not power hungry because he's been fighting that his entire life,
Right,
but the motives behind his expansionism is still the motive it was before. It's we are protecting our people, and if it's like we see people out there who are being oppressed and being whatever, we have to go out there and protect those who can't protect themselves, kind of thing.
right.
And so, like, you can see that as their motivation and their rallying cry as Sith, whereas 50,000 years in the future, you've lost that and it's just we need power, we are the rightful, and so you can still
Exactly.
the seed is still expansionism and power and you know through power my chains are broken kind of thing, but
Right.
toned back a bit because we're trying to show where it starts, not necessarily how it became the evil versus the good, I guess.
Well, and that's exactly it. You want to show how it can be transformed into what they are in present Star Wars.
Right.
It should be the fledgling. There should be tendencies, there should be signs that this is where it's going. And then you take that for 50,000 years, 100,000 years, and it becomes
Right.
like
You
hyper concentrated. You
right.
know what I
You
mean?
see
You
the
you distill it
natural
down.
Right. You see the natural progression of where these initial doctrines, initial ideas stem from and where they go to unchecked.
Right.
And so I really like that idea. And again, to go back to the exact main point that we started from, this is so that you can see how two people starting at the same beginning, at the same why can't I think of the right word? The
Origin.
beginning is the same. Their origin is the same. They start at the exact same point in time, facing the exact same things, and they are learning from each other and from the exact same sources, but taking completely different lessons and approaches and getting to a completely different result based
Exactly.
on, their personality, their outlook, their everything. I really like it, Zach. I'm getting excited about this in a way that I wasn't a year ago, even though I really loved this idea when but like,
It's a good idea.
is it is such a good idea because, like you said, you're getting away from the same 60, 70, 80 year period that everything has been done in. From
Exactly.
from when Anakin was Anakin to when Kylo Ren kissed Rey, like, which still
You
bugs the crap out of me. Should have been Finn,
wasn't me. Wasn't
but
me.
the point being, you are taking so much in the past and finding the origins and the roots and like the real motivation behind the two powers in the galaxy, and it's almost scary the way that you want to, not you, but the way that like all of these things happen. It's the
Exactly.
smallest turning point, the slightest deviation turns into this galaxy-wide feud that has caused the destruction of thousands of worlds and billions or trillions of people. And
And it starts with two brothers.
it starts with two brothers and two little differing paths.
Yep. So I mean,
I
I genuinely think this would be a winner. This would be something that could be exciting enough, new enough, fresh enough to reignite the excitement of the fandom,
Right,
and really bring everybody together because it's not, oh, the prequels suck or the sequels suck or the originals are the only ones that are true.
right.
It's away from all of that.
I know
But
that the
it's,
original trilogy is the only true Star
oh
Wars
gosh,
trilogy. I
getting sacrilegious up in here.
apologize, but I could not help it. But I agree with that because that does really get you to the excitement of, we can go back to what Star Wars was. It was a
Exactly.
good versus evil, um, exciting new world, things you hadn't seen before. You can go back and capture that magic from the beginning again. And I don't know, that I have a hard time seeing where this goes wrong.
I mean, as
I mean,
long as you have solid writing.
granted, it all is about solid writing and things that we've talked about before. It's not the gimmicks. It's not the. I'm trying to say, like, it's not the weird things that made Jack Sparrow Jack Sparrow. It was
Exactly.
his motivations and Will's motivations and all of these things that. So if you can write that well for three movies, dude,
It'd be great.
it'd be great. But you've heard Zach and I talk about this. What would you do? What would you add in, or what makes sense to you for the beginning of this trilogy? Like I said, we're planting a seed to show how these two groups became what they are later and to reignite your love of Star Wars without getting bogged down with the Skywalker trilogy. So, or saga, not trilogy. So, what would you do? What would you change? Are we on the right track here? We want to know. Leave a comment because we really think this would be fun. Zach, what do you have to say before we end up?
Thanks for listening. Let me know what your thoughts were on all my ideas. Let me know if you think they're completely bogus. Let me know if you think there are any other cool spectacles like the bleeding of the Kyber crystal that could be cool to add here. Just let us know what you think. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend about us. We're just here to talk about fun things, Star Wars in particular, and we'll catch you next week.